Welcome back. So this is where we stopped in the last part, and I like to make a change here in the gender required. I like to put this true in quotes. Okay, if you don't put that in quotes it makes more sense, but I don't know, I like to keep this way. Okay, so now we're going to build our validation class. Before that we had to require a file, so I'm going to require once validation.php. So let's go and create this file now. Okay, going to save this as validation.php. So I'm going to create a class validation. Okay, and inside that class I'm going to create a public function form validation. Okay, and I'm going to give something like rules here, and then what I like to do is also have a private variable. Okay, so it's going to be private validation rules. Here validation rules. Okay, and sorry, forgot to open this PHP thing here. Alright, so looks okay so far, and so we have this private variable validation rules, right? So when you access that inside a function, it will be something like this validation rules. Okay, and I'm going to give this argument as rules argument to this private variable. Okay, so back here in our form validation file, after we have this array with set of rules, what we are going to do now is initialize this validation class. Okay, so the way we will do that is by validation equal to new validation, right? That's the class name, and then we are going to do something like, you don't even have to give this as validation. I like to keep this even more smaller. So v is an object for our class validation, then we'll access this function here. Okay, form validation, and we are going to pass this rules. Okay, validation rules as argument there. So when you pass this argument, this should actually activate our form validation. Okay, that's how we are going to set this whole thing. We initialize the validation class and we are accessing the function, public function form validation. We are passing the argument validation rules. Okay, so that goes here to this rules, and it should have been assigned to this private variable now, right? So let's see whether we got that right. Okay, I'll give something like var dump. Inside that we'll validation rules, right? So we had to test this now. Alright, you guys can see here we got this entire array, right, as our validation. So what I'm going to do now is to have an if condition. Okay, if we have validation rules, then we'll do further processing. Okay, wait, I will just print this once again. It's fine, it's going to be this, right? So if it is set, if we have all the rules, validation should work, or else it shouldn't work at all, and should give us the same result now. Yeah, but we have a problem here, that is, guys, this was supposed to work only when we submit the form, right? We can't just display the error directly. So this should work only when we submit the form. So the way we are going to do that is by using something called request. We could give get or post if we want, but the problem is the front end, the user of this validation class might give either post or get, right? We can't be sure what he's going to give in the form action here. He might give post or even get. It's up to end user. So we give request here. It detects get and post right here. So let's test this now. Okay, we don't have any result now, right, from that function. So when we submit, you can see here we're getting that. So we fixed this issue for now, right? Okay, now it's time to use the technique we learned in the last part of this series. Okay, last video, that is, you see here we have this for loop, right? I'm going to copy this from here and paste right inside here. Okay, and then so should be this, right? Should be this, because it's a private variable. We have all the values in this part, right? So should be this validation rules. We don't need dollar here, and now we have all the data right from here. All these rules are available in our class. And so first thing we need is the field, right? So we have this field here and rules, which are actually basically these arrays, right? So what I'm going to do is pass this to a function. Okay, so I'm going to have a private function. Okay, so this is going to be this process validation results. Okay, so it's a private function, and sorry about this. So, and it's going to take two arguments. One is field, okay, and another one is rules, which is basically an array, right, with rules for that particular field. So this is how we are going to pass this, and we need to create this function now. And remember, it's a private function, right? So after this function down here, I'm going to give private function, right, process validation results. So inside that I have another for each. If you're wondering why we are going to have another for each, we had to process these rules. Remember, it's an array, and we already worked that out right here. We have another for each, remember, to process these rules here, right? So I'm going to use that here, and inside that we are going to check for all the rules. Okay, so the first thing is going to be rule, right? So rule actually gives this these rules, right? The name of these rules, that is required boolean, like that, meaning length. So the first rule we are going to check is required. Okay, required. If rule is required, and remember this value, so this value is going to be true, right? So if required and value equal to true, this we are giving like this because we gave this whole thing in quotes, remember? Okay, so if that is the condition, required rule. Okay, so we'll have a private function called required, and it's going to take two values. One, so it's going to be field name. So the first field name is naturally going to be the name, right? Remember, we got the field here in this for each, and it is passed down here. So we have the field here, and then we are going to have value. Okay, So value we got extracted here from, if the field is name and the rule is required, this is going to be the value for required, right? We don't need this anymore because we already called that function here, and so we don't have to worry about that, this key anymore. Key, yeah. So we just need field and value now. So we had to create this function now, okay, and it's a private function. We are using this here. So let's create a private function required, and in here we're going to use an if condition, okay? If empty, if it is empty of, we had to check with the request, okay? So it's request of field. You remember field is actually this name, right? And we are using request of field. It means request of name, which means it denotes, it actually refers to this particular input field, okay? So that's the technique. We are using request, so whether this is going to be get or post request by the form, it will check for this particular field, right? Name, because we are giving that name here inside the field and we are giving here as request. So if it is empty, we are going to return false, okay? If that is not the case, we are going to just return true. So back here, we have to check whether the value returned is true or false, right? If not, okay, if not, I'll remove this. Then we had to just echo something like first is field, right? We have the field name here, and I'll concatenate something with that, like required. So we could test this for now, but remember we had to access this function form validation. I believe we already did that here. We did here, right? Form validation. So we don't need this anymore, so I'm going to comment out this section for now. Okay, so let's test this code. Okay, we got nothing here, and when I submit, you can see here name required, and it also says age required, right? So it just worked magically. We already, our required rule is already starting to work. Okay, so now we can process other rule. Let's see, we have this min length back here. So this is where we are checking for required, right? What I'm going to do now is give else if, okay, and in that we'll have something like here rule, right? So rule equal to min length, okay? If that is the case, then again we are going to have a function, right? So we'll have this if not again, okay? It's going to be this, the private function, and that function name is going to be min length, okay? Sorry, no space there, okay? So this is our function, okay? And if this doesn't work, we could give echo could give something like minimum length should be, okay? And minimum length we have here in the rule, and it's the value is 2 here, right? So that is available here in this value, right? So this is the rule, and this is the value here. Okay, so we have field and value, so we get the value here, so we should get that minimum length equal to 2, right? So that 2 should be the value by now. I'm going to give value, and so now we have to create this function min length, right? And we also need to give argument. For that I forgot here, so argument is going to be same, field and value. Okay, so let's create this function now. So again it's going to be a private function, right? Private function. Okay, string length. Okay, we are going to use string length function here, strlen of request. Sorry about this, should be underscore. So it's string length of request of field, right? So the field is going to be there, and if this is less than value, you remember value is where we are going to have this, right? This 2. So if it is less than value, the string length of that particular field is less than the value, we just have to return false, right? If that is not the case, we can return true. So this is how we handle this min length, and as you can imagine, even for maximum length we can use the same technique, right? Let's say I'm going to do here, so it's going to be max length, and so this field, let's see, if we have the here, right, max length, so it should be, if it is what, greater than value, right? So if it is greater than value, then it has to return false, which means our value should be within that max length, right? Shouldn't be more than that. That's the whole logic here. So we'll do that as well here. I'll just copy this part and paste in here, and I'll make this max length, okay, and here as well max length, and should be maximum, right? Okay, that's it. So let's try this now. Submit. You can see here we're getting every rule we gave right now, right? That is min length, max length, and required. So all these rules are firing nice. Okay, so now we have to check for Boolean, right? We have Boolean here, which is kind of tricky. We'll copy this again. So if it is going to be Boolean, and you guys know exactly what to do, we'll use max length, if rule equal to Boolean. Okay, so in that case we are going to use a function Boolean. Okay, and then we'll say not something like not a valid option, right? Not a valid option. So now we have to create this function, private function Boolean, private function Boolean. Sorry about this. So back here I'm going to have a variable, okay, result equal to false, and then I'm going to use for each. So you remember this value for boolean is particularly an array, right? So it's going to be value as val, okay, and then it's going to be result equal to true, and if that is not the case, we'll return result here. I know it's confusing, let me explain that to you guys. So we are setting this result as false, right? And we are using this for each to check for all these values, these boolean values, right? And okay, I forgot to do something here. Should be if, okay, so it's going to be request of field, right? Request of field equal to val. In this case, what happens is, if it matches with any of the options here, okay, if the field value of the radio button matches with any of the options here, this result is going to be true, right? If that is not the case, it's going to be false, because initially we are setting that as false and we are returning the result, right? So this is how boolean is going to work. It's a bit tricky but easy to implement, okay? So all this works fine. Now we have to even process this further to improve our whole system, okay? So guys, in the next part we'll be doing all that, and so I'll conclude this for now, this part, okay? And please subscribe to our channel and also like our videos. Thanks for your time.